aim of this video is to make your eyes go as funny as possible with all the stripes. This wrap-up's going to be a bit shorter than usual because I've already filmed the first half of the month and I'll link that in the description. So these are the 8 books that I read in the latter part of July. The first book was The Cheese Monkeys by Chip Kidd. Now this is actually a YA novel, and as you know I don't often read YA novels, but the reason I wanted to read this one is that it is written by Chip Kidd, who is a graphic designer. He's kind of the rock star of book cover design. I really wish I had the physical copy with me because it's amazing, the design of it. I mean, he was just able to do whatever the hell he wanted, which is fantastic. Sadly, it is in New Zealand, but if you ever have a chance to look at it, it's well worth it. So I had mixed feelings about this book. It's set at a university, so that's always a plus for me, and it's set at a design school. In the first half of the book, the characters are doing general arts, and then in the second half they specialise in graphic design. And they have a very eccentric and cantankerous teacher. So what I liked about this book were the references to art and to design. Parts of it felt like a graphic design 101, so that was quite fun. It's also very amusing in places. But I had some issues with characterizations. There's a manic pixie dream girl, and I'm never a fan of that trope. And also their graphic design teacher was caricatured to the point of excess. Despite those two things, it was quite a fun read, and I may read the sequel at some point. The second book that I read was The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. This is written by Sun Wei Huang, and it has been translated from Korean into English. As the name would suggest, this is about a hen, and she's no longer content just being a laying hen. She decides to try and make her life better. You could almost read this as a sort of Handmaid's Tale-esque dystopia, and it has a lot of parallels with Animal Farm, which I'm going to talk about later in the video. It's very much in the style of a fable, and so I felt like some of the morals were maybe a little bit heavy-handed, but if you're interested in fables and fairy tales, those kinds of things, then you might find this quite interesting. The next book I read was Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson, and I read this as a buddy read with Nicole from Wolf's Whistle. Her channel is wonderful, and you should all go and subscribe. She talks a lot about LGBT books, which this is, and she always has interesting stuff to say, so do have a look at her channel. The fascinating thing about this book is that the gender of the narrator is never disclosed. So I took this as a challenge, and I read it with pencil in hand, underlining things hither and thither. I didn't come to any concrete conclusions because there really is no solid evidence one way or the other. Jeanette Winterson's writing is absolutely exquisite, and I would recommend this book just on those grounds, but it's also a beautiful story, and there's this sense of mystery as well because of the gender thing. The only thing that troubled me is that there is some sort of body shaming towards the end, which made me quite uncomfortable. I don't like it when people's bodies are used to denote their character, and especially their moral character. So because of that, I gave this 4 stars, but it is a truly amazing book, and I would definitely recommend that you read it. Then I read some fantasy. This was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I probably don't need to say much about this because everybody seems to know about it. I'm the last person in the universe to read it, but it's so good. I mean, it's set at a magical university. What more could you want from a book? It's expertly crafted, the world building is fantastic. I mean, I don't read a lot of fantasy, so I don't have a lot to compare it with, but I loved it. And I'm actually reading the sequel at the moment. Then I finally read Animal Farm by George Orwell. I'm assuming that most people know the general gist of this book. It's basically Stalinist Russia, except with animals. But it's an amazing book. I mean, there's a reason that it's a classic. I'm not going to pretend that I have anything new and revolutionary to say about Animal Farm, but I would say that if you haven't read it, then it's definitely well worthwhile. I listened to it on audiobook over the course of a day, which suited me really well. This book is the 3rd buddy read that I did in the month of July, and this was The Magic Toyshop by Angela Carter, which is in this lovely Virago Modern Classics edition. This was another book that I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. I was expecting there to be a lot of magical realism in this book, and there wasn't. I felt like there was a lot of potential for magical realism, but it didn't play out that way, and instead you had these very threatening presences in the text. I won't say much more about this one because I think it's a fun one to go into blind. I really didn't know much about this before I started reading. I just assumed that it was going to be about a magical toy shop where all the toys came to life. But it wasn't. I'm actually currently working on an illustrated book cover for the Magic Toyshop. I enjoyed the book and there were lots of visual elements in there, so I thought it would be a fun one to add to my portfolio. If you want sneaky peeks of how that's going, then you can find them on Instagram and I'll link that below. Next, I read All Over Creation by Ruth Ozeki. This was my third Ruth Ozeki book and it now means that I have read all of her published works. A Tale for the Time Being remains my favourite, but I did really enjoy this one as well. It's another one that mixes in sort of feminism and food production, and I mean, you wouldn't think that those two things would really go together, but she does an amazing job with them. Like in Ozeki's other novels, you've got two women at the heart of this. They were childhood friends, but one of them ran away from home at one point and disappeared. So this book starts out with her returning home to care for her dying father. And then a whole lot of organic, potato-loving hippies come in, and I'll leave you to discover the rest for yourself. It's a really human story, it's really heartbreaking at times, but it's also really beautiful at times. And I feel like Ozeki balances humour and heartbreak really, really well. I would still say to start with A Tale for the Time Being, but if you've read her other works and really liked it, then definitely do read All Over Creation. And the final book that I read in July was a reread, and this is of one of my favourite books. It's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So I can confirm that this book is just as good the second time round. I worried a little that I wouldn't enjoy it so much because I knew what was going to happen, but I still felt that sense of suspense. It's the characters that really make this book. So if you haven't read this, do! It's amazing. It's beautiful and I love it. So those were all the books that I read in the second half of July. If you want to see the first half, again, it's linked in the description. And yes, I know, it's a lot of books. I've actually made a video very recently about how I read so many books. So if you're interested in reading more books, then go and watch that video. I just wanted to say a really quick thank you for everyone's lovely, lovely, lovely comments on my design portfolio video. I was a little apprehensive about putting that video up, so I was just overwhelmed and delighted with the response that I got. So thank you all. As always, thank you very much for those who've subscribed and liked, and thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye!